NFL trade rumors are starting to heat up as we get further into preseason. Let's break down those rumored candidates and their landing spots, in my opinion. The Breece Hall trade talks are starting to get pretty serious out of Jets camp after their first preseason game. There was rumors about this months ago. Breece Hall even voicing his frustration, not demanding a new contract, but would like one, but mainly doesn't want to split carries with all those other backs, which Aaron Glenn and the new Jet staff, that's what they want to do. They want to have a group of running backs that split carries. Not sitting well with Breece Hall, so they could move on from the distraction. He's on an expiring deal. Get something for him now rather than wait and trade him. Which teams make the most sense for him to possibly be playing on in 2025? I look at the Chicago Bears. On paper, they definitely can use another running back. I feel like he would be awesome in that Ben Johnson offense. An explosive runner, really solid pass catcher. And the Bears are kind of quietly looking for a back right now. They kind of passed up on the opportunity of adding J.K. Dobbins or the Nick Chubbs, right? So now, nearing the season, they could be, I still expect them to add one. So the Bears make the most sense if he were to be traded from the Jets, but there's a shot he ends up just staying with the Jets. The Jets might just want that big, deep room of running backs because that's their style under Aaron Glenn. And there's a shot that the Jets kind of, they demand a third or a fourth round pick because Breece Hall is a very skilled football player, right? But because they're losing leverage, because he's on an expiring deal, there might not be any team that gives that up, so the two sides maybe can't reach an agreement on a trade. Therefore, he's back with the Jets. But I look at teams like the Commanders. They're not desperate for a running back, but I feel like Breece Hall would be their best running back. They would give him a boost. That offense under Cliff Kingsbury with Jaden Daniels, they want to throw the ball a lot, and Breece Hall could be a big part of that. But they have Brian Robinson Jr., they have Austin Eckler, they have Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who I like a lot. They got a pretty deep running back room, but Breece Hall could be their best if they dealt for him. And the Broncos have a very deep running back room. They somewhat recently signed J.K. Dobbins, so you may say, yeah, no for the Broncos, but there's nothing locked in with J.K. Dobbins contract-wise where they're stuck with starting him or anything like that. Sean Payton's running game has always been very key, very important, and he could just look to get better here. But I have the Broncos down the list, so I'm not really saying count on it. I'm saying don't fully count on that. I'm just not going to rule them out completely. I really like the Bears for adding a running back, and Breece Hall has to be at the top of the list unless they really don't want to trade for someone. Then someone that could be available as a free agent could be at the top of that list. Yeah, he's not going to be super expensive, expiring deal, so is he going to end up being a rental? So teams got to be very careful when trading for him. I'd say around a fourth-round pick for Breece Hall makes sense. You could argue his talent says third round, but given the circumstances, drop the value down. It could be anywhere from a third to a fifth-round pick. I think a fifth-round pick for his talents would be a steal or close to a steal. So definitely one to watch with the latest rumors. Kyle Duggar in the latest Patriots practices has been running with the second-team defense. That could mean the Patriots are just trying to motivate him, get him going, coming off an underwhelming season last year. But a lot of legit reports that watch out for the Patriots potentially trying to trade Kyle Duggar. Maybe it's because he was underwhelming last year. Maybe the new staff just doesn't love him. Maybe they don't love his new contract. Possible all of the above. So definitely a name to watch. Down year last year. Had some flashes in the past. Still has upside. Really good in the box. Could use him as a blitzer. Can get pretty instinctive down there as well. I still think he has some upside here. So with the right defense, he could get going. Tricky part is the contract. He's going to cost over $10 million for the acquiring team cap hit wise. Most teams, maybe all the teams out there that are interested in trading for Duggar, they're not going to want to pay that, right? They're going to demand the Patriots pay a portion of that salary. Now, that's actually very doable because the Patriots have a ton of cap space this year. They do want a lot to roll over. It could still work, right? And that'll kind of determine what the compensation, what the trade value is. A couple years ago, you'd say he's worth a day two pick. Not so much anymore. Fourth, fifth would feel like, especially if the Patriots are paying a portion of that, that'd feel like a steal for an acquiring team, in my opinion at least. Coming up with the teams, I like the Bengals. They definitely could use some more help on defense. It's a new defense under Al Golden. Typically likes those safeties that can get downhill, play in the box, that can blitz. They can upgrade there for sure. Again, the trade could be a little tricky because of contract. And maybe the Patriots want him. Maybe these are just rumors right now. I think they'd be open for business, but he could end up back with the Patriots. There's not a long list of teams that are desperate for a safety right now. Look at the Vikings. Last year they played 3 safeties over 1,000 snaps. They lost Cam Bynum, so they could use another one. You could argue specifically they would probably be in the market for more of a free safety, but it's debatable. I think Duggar would be fantastic in Brian Flores' defense, but maybe not at the top of the Vikings to-do list right now. The Commanders definitely could use an upgrade at strong safety. Remember, they lost Jeremy Chin last year. They have Terry McLaurin to deal with right now. It just doesn't really feel like they're looking to spend big money on defense, but maybe that could change here closing in on the season. Buccaneers could be a sneaky one. First glance, you don't think they need a safety, but they had a significant number of safeties play a lot of snaps last year. They don't have all those guys on the roster right now. Jordan Whitehead, Mike Edwards. So they could be looking to use, they could use another one. They're not going to be desperate. And I see on Twitter, at least social media, the Panthers being mentioned the most when it comes to Kyle Duggar, as it's being reported that he's a legit trade candidate right now. It could happen. It could happen. The only issue for me is they signed Trevon Moehrig to big money, and that's off of his one breakout year last year where he actually played more as a strong safety. He played a bit of everything back there, but played better in the box. So, to me, Duggar's not a fit, but Moehrig has experience playing free safety. They could trade for Duggar, put him at strong, put Moehrig at free. It's possible. I can't rule it out. I just wouldn't like it. I actually like both safeties, Duggar and Moehrig, but I wouldn't like that. I think they're better off with Moehrig at strong and just kind of trying to find their way at the free safety position. So, interesting, legit trade candidate to be watching right now. Eagles quarterback Tanner McKee. How about that kid in his first preseason game? Now, this isn't me saying he's going to get traded, but there's a lot of rumors out there because he dominated in that preseason game. He looked like not just a legit young quarterback. He looked like he could be a legit starting quarterback, and the Eagles know how to evaluate, develop, so teams could be definitely buying in, as maybe they should be, into that. So I bet you the Eagles get calls, and there's a lot of chatter about that on social media. What if? What if he's available? What if a team desperate for a quarterback? What if a team with a certain coach that coached him, Kellen Moore and the Saints, want to get better at quarterback? Do they give the Eagles a call? What would it take? So there's a lot of talk about it right now, a lot of rumors, but if you have a good young quarterback, a legit young quarterback that could be someone, I don't really care what your quarterback situation is. You should probably hang on to that guy. But if you can get something significant for him, then maybe the Eagles, because the Eagles got Jalen Hurts. That's their guy. They just plan on him being the guy no matter what for a significant amount of years still. But so maybe they want to move on from McKee and they feel like they can draft another quarterback and do the same thing with him. It's definitely possible. But when you have a guy that's turning heads like this, young, just getting going, has a lot of upside, it's tough to get rid of those guys. So I'd say most likely he's with the Eagles this year, but I bet you teams call. I look at the Saints, Kellen Moore there. They do like Spencer Rattler. A lot of good hype out of him, out of Saints camp. And Tyler Shuck, obviously they liked him a lot, and they still do. So they may feel like they're going to, if they can get McKee for a steal, then yeah, but maybe they sit put. The Colts, Shane Steichen, Eagles background, not that he has ties to Tanner McKee, but the quarterback situation's not looking great right now. And they're not really in love with Anthony Richardson, it feels like. They benched him last year. He keeps getting injured. He still needs to get better. Daniel Jones, I think he can play well in Steichen's offense, but is he the answer right now even, but for long term? So they could be interested in McKee. And the Vikings, their guy's J.J. McCarthy for this year, and they have Sam Howell, who actually looked pretty solid in the first preseason game. But yeah, a lot of reports where it's, it hasn't looked super pretty at camp so far. They're a little bit of a dark horse in this category. They definitely want to give McCarthy a try, but is there a world where they bring McKee in and they have him right behind him and maybe he can be the guy of the future? But more of a dark horse team there. But I bet you teams are calling about McKee. Just would be wise of the Eagles maybe to hang on for him right now unless somebody just really blows them away with the compensation, with the trade offer. But they'll be seeking, if they're going to trade him, a day 2 pick. The Tyreek Hill trade rumors are actually starting to heat up. A league source has said multiple unnamed teams are monitoring the Tyreek Hill situation in terms of him potentially being available. They believe the Dolphins will give in and look to deal him. Might not be the case. The Dolphins said they're not really looking to deal him at one point. It's like a month ago, more than that. They will be willing to trade him if the offer is significant. Now, is the team going to offer that? We'll see. But maybe they come down on that price given the situation. At one point, Hill kind of threw the team under the bus, asked for a trade, wanted to be somewhere else, more of a winning, team. Went back on that. How are the team vibes now, though? He gets in trouble off the field at times, and Tua's saying they're trying to work on the relationship. Now he's making comments about how Mike McDaniel's running things on the goal line, the red zone. It's just not comments he should be making. So where are the vibes at right now? Could the Dolphins give in and trade him? It's possible. They would need another receiver, though. That's kind of the only thing. They'd be pretty desperate for one. It's a little tricky because how many teams should be willing to trade for Tyreek Hill, given he kind of gets off, in trouble off the field at times. He, brings down the vibe sometimes, and he needs a winning team, a significant winning team, or he's going to get a little unhappy. So it really should only be contenders that need a receiver, and maybe it would be a rental, even though he has multiple years on his contract. Team trades for him now and then moves on from him before the significant cap hits on the deal. It's definitely a possibility. Most likely, a lot needs to happen here. We're only a few weeks away from the season. What are the chances the Dolphins trade their star receiver? I'd say most likely he ends up back in the Dolphins. But I look at the Chiefs, going back to the Chiefs. They want to get back on track, winning Super Bowls. Rashee Rice could get suspended. Hollywood Brown had an injury last year, a little shaken up right now. They could just look to get better with Tyreek Hill. They can afford him now. They maybe move on from him after this year, make a decision when that comes so they don't have to pay for him. With the huge cap hits in the future. I look at the Niners, and at first I was like, would the Niners really trade for Tyreek Hill? They have Ayuk right now, who's could be a little bit of a distraction, but Niners are a good football team. They're trying to win. They badly need a receiver right now. Ayuk's going to miss, 6 or 7 games, it sounds. There's multiple injuries. They could get better at that spot. If they believe they can compete right now with a guy like Tyreek Hill, contend, then it's something I think they could consider. I look at the Commanders, a little bit of a wild card, a little bit more of a dark horse here because they got the Terry McLaurin situation. So maybe it's not likely. And I do think I've been preaching. I think most likely the Commanders reach a deal with Terry McLaurin. They got to have him back, right? But there is a world where they just do not want to pay him long term. They don't want to, pay him down the line, big extension. And they're going to need another receiver, though. There is a world where it makes sense because the Dolphins would need another receiver. Could you flip those guys? Could there be picks involved? Sure. And then the Commanders, basically, they're trying to contend this year. They're trying to win. They rent Tyreek Hill for this year, move on from him in the future, and then try to find that next receiver. Then this way they don't have to worry about paying a receiver long term like a Terry McLaurin. And then if they flip him, then the Dolphins could get a receiver back in return in Terry McLaurin. So it sounds crazy. A lot has to happen, but there's a world where that makes sense. But I think even though there's rumors right now, a lot has to happen here. But what would he cost? I would say multiple day 2 picks. I don't see a team trading a first-round pick. A team might not even trade multiple day 2 picks, just given the whole situation with Tyreek Hill. So we'll see what happens there, but there are some rumors floating around. And Terry McLaurin, who we've talked about a bit, I feel like it just makes sense for the Commanders to kind of give him a deal. They really juiced up this offense. They're not going to move on from their best weapon, right, unless they have a replacement plan. So I think most likely something gets done between the Commanders and Terry McLaurin. But the other teams that make the most sense, Patriots, Raiders, and I threw the Dolphins in there just because I think that Tyreek Hill, Terry McLaurin flip, you could argue it can make some sense, but I really expect McLaurin back with the Commanders this year. But a guy that's being talked about a lot, so I had to include him in this video. But is pretty pricey and needs a very pricey extension. What would he go for? First round pick, or because he needs an extension, would that drop off to multiple day 2 picks? Definitely a possibility. Micah Parsons, still a lot of chatter about him. We gave him his own video recently, so kind of recapping all that. The Dallas Cowboys may be pretty stubborn when trading Micah Parsons, as they should be. It's hard to see them actually dealing him before the season starts. They may rather let him hold out and just not give him to anyone else. It's definitely a possibility. They also could reach a deal on an extension. But there are some teams that make sense. You have to check boxes to be able to trade for Micah Parsons. Not just needing a pass rusher. $24 million this year, pretty expensive to be able to afford him right now. Not a lot of teams can do that, and he's going to be the highest paid defensive player in football when it's all said and done. You have to be able to afford that. The Buccaneers would be even more of a contender with him right now. They would have their guy for the future, and they could afford him. They make a lot of sense. The Titans, they just drafted Cam Ward. They're not going to need their picks for a quarterback anytime soon, so they can afford to trade those picks. Badly need an edge rusher, loads of future spending money. They can make it happen. And the Chargers, the only knock on the Chargers here, trading for a guy like Parsons, would be they may just want to keep their picks. They've been doing a really good job drafting, but they could trade like multiple round 1 picks and still have the rest of their drafts. But a guy to play along with Khalil Mack and kind of take Khalil Mack's spot after this year, a lot of spending money, makes a lot of sense. A lot of teams could be interested. Those are the ones that stood out, but it's going to be hard to see the Cowboys just going, yeah, we'll trade him like right now, anytime soon. We're only a few weeks away from the season. But again, teams like the Buccaneers, maybe the Titans, they make a lot of sense, but going to cost multiple first-round picks, maybe more, probably more with that. So it'd be a pretty big price tag in terms of money and what you would have to trade. But there you have it, the latest rumors, latest candidates, and their landing spots, in my opinion. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Any more candidates you can think of with landing spots? Let's talk about it in the comments. But covering everything NFL, and can't wait for our in-season content. So join us, like, subscribe to notifications on. It's going to do it. Thanks for watching.